At some point in your life, there is a reasonable chance you will lie down on a table, breathe in through a mask, and stop existing. Not die, not sleep, something else entirely. You will be there, and then you will not be there, and then you will be back. And the part that nobody tells you before they put you under is this: nobody knows where you went. General anesthesia is one of the most commonly performed medical interventions on the planet. Roughly 250 million people undergo general anesthesia every year worldwide. It has been used in surgery since 1846, and in all that time, scientists have never fully explained how it works. They know what it does to the body, but the question of what actually happens to consciousness remains one of the most contested and unsettling open questions in all of neuroscience. Let's start with what you think happens. Most people assume general anesthesia is a very deep sleep. You go under, you go dark, you wake up. That assumption is wrong in almost every important way. Sleep and anesthesia look similar from the outside, but the brain under general anesthesia does not look anything like a sleeping brain. In sleep, your brain cycles through distinct stages. It consolidates memories, it processes emotions, it generates dreams. It remains, in a very real sense, active and engaged with its own interior. The anesthetized brain is doing something different. In 2014, Emery Brown at MIT described general anesthesia as a reversible drug-induced coma. Not sleep, a coma. A coma is not a phase of normal consciousness. It is an interruption of consciousness so complete that the mechanisms are taken offline. And here is the part that should make you stop and think. You have been under general anesthesia if you have had surgery, or you may be under it in the future. And the experience of it from the inside is not darkness. It is not like closing your eyes. There is no darkness because darkness requires a subject to perceive it. There is simply nothing. And then there is you again on the other side, with no sense of the gap. No memory of the absence because there was no one present to form one. Philosophers call this the problem of the explanatory gap. In 2020, neuroscientist Marcello Massimini at the University of Milan published research using transcranial magnetic stimulation to probe the brains of anesthetized patients. When you stimulate a conscious brain with a magnetic pulse, it responds with a complex cascade of activity that ripples across multiple regions. The response is rich, varied, and highly differentiated. When you do the same thing to an anesthetized brain, the response collapses. The cascade disappears. The signal stays local. It does not travel. The brain is still there, physically intact, neurons still firing, blood still flowing. But the integrated, differentiated activity that appears to be the neural signature of consciousness is gone. Not reduced, not dimmed, structurally absent. Massimini's framework, built on the integrated information theory of consciousness developed by Giulio Tononi at the University of Wisconsin, suggests that consciousness is not a thing the brain has, it is something the brain does. Specifically, it is what happens when information is integrated across the brain in a highly differentiated way. When anesthesia collapses that integration, the doing stops, and whatever you are, you stop with it. But here is where it gets genuinely strange. Because the drug goes away and you come back, the same you, continuous with the person who went under, remembering your life, your name, the reason you were on the table, the identity reassembles itself on the other side of a gap that, from the inside, had zero duration. You were gone, and then you were back. And the you that came back is indistinguishable from the you that left. How? That question is not rhetorical. It is one of the central unsolved problems in consciousness research. If consciousness requires integrated neural activity, and anesthesia eliminates that integration, then what exactly persists through the gap that allows the self to reconstitute on the other side? Where is the information stored that tells your brain who you are when you wake up? Your memories are still there, Your personality is still there. Your sense of continuous identity is still there. But the process that was generating those things was interrupted completely. It is as if you paused a river. Not dammed it, not diverted it, but genuinely paused it. Every molecule of water held perfectly still and then resumed it. And the river kept flowing as if nothing had happened. The water doesn't know it stopped. The river doesn't know it stopped. But something stopped it, and something started it again. And the thing that did the stopping and starting is a drug that we discovered through trial and error in the 1840s and still do not fully understand. There is another layer to this that medicine does not advertise: anesthesia awareness. It is rare, occurring in roughly 1 to 2 cases per 1,000 procedures, but it is real, documented, and deeply disturbing. Anesthesia awareness is what happens when the drug fails to fully suppress consciousness, but still suppresses the ability to move or signal distress. The patient remains aware during surgery. They may feel pain. They may hear the surgical team speaking. They may be completely unable to communicate that they are conscious. And they may remember some or all of it afterward. In 2014, a landmark study published in the journal Anesthesia, conducted across 300 hospitals in the United Kingdom, found that approximately 1 in 19,000 patients reported definite awareness during general anesthesia. That sounds small, until you multiply it by 250 million procedures per year globally. The number of people who may be conscious during surgery every single year runs into the tens of thousands. And here is what that tells you about the nature of anesthesia. The drug is not targeting consciousness directly. It cannot, because we do not know precisely what consciousness is or where it lives in the brain. The drug is targeting the systems that generate the outward signs of consciousness: movement, response to stimulation, certain patterns of brain activity. Consciousness itself, the inner experience of being present and aware, may persist even when all of those outward signs are gone. Which means the thing that makes you you is not identical to any of the biological markers we use to detect it. In 2022, a research team at Cambridge University, led by David Menon, began developing new monitoring tools specifically designed to detect residual consciousness in anesthetized patients. Their work builds on the recognition that standard monitoring devices measure brain activity in ways that correlate with consciousness, but do not measure it directly. The gap between those two things is where anesthesia awareness lives. So where did you go? The honest answer from the people who study this most carefully is that we don't know. The integrated activity that appears to be the neural signature of consciousness was interrupted. The brain that generates your experience of being you was taken offline in a way that is meaningfully different from sleep, different from coma caused by injury, different from any naturally occurring state. And then it was brought back, and you were there again. One possibility is that you didn't go anywhere, that the self is not something that persists between moments of consciousness, but is generated fresh each time consciousness resumes. That the you who woke up from surgery is not the same you who went under in any deep sense, just as the you who wakes up each morning is a reconstruction, rather than a continuation. Anesthesia simply makes the gap visible in a way that sleep doesn't. Because sleep leaves traces, leaves dreams, leaves the feeling of time having passed. Anesthesia leaves nothing. And nothing, it turns out, is one of the most disorienting things a conscious being can encounter. The other possibility is stranger, that something persists, that identity is encoded in the brain in ways that survive even the complete collapse of integrated neural activity, that the self is more durable than the process that generates its moment-to-moment experience. That whatever you are robust enough to survive your own disappearance. Both of those possibilities are disturbing in different ways, and neither of them has been ruled out. Every year, 250 million people go under. They stop existing in the only sense that matters to them, and then they come back. And none of them can tell you what happened in between, because there was no one there to notice.